It's me, Pastor Connie. I'm glad you could join me for today's discussion. Are you ready? Marvelous. Let's get going. This week, we are going to look at the life of Thomas, the disciple who will forever be known as Doubting Thomas. But was Thomas always questioning everybody and everything? Well, not much has been written about Thomas and his characteristic questioning, so we'll have to rely on the Bible, the Gospels, the book of Acts, as well as several other historical and apocryphal texts to piece together his journey after Pentecost. But hey, we can do that. So let's take a look at this fascinating disciple apostle named Thomas. So who was Thomas? Well, it's believed that Thomas was born in Bethsaida, Galilee, in the early years of the 1st century AD. Now, we're never told the names of his father or mother or how Jesus called him to be a disciple. However, John's Gospel wrote that Thomas was called Didymus, which is a Greek word for twin. Now, over the centuries, scholars and historians have feverishly sought to identify Thomas's twin. Some have invented a twin brother or sister for Thomas. Some believe that Thomas shared similar facial features with Jesus, and hence he was called the twin. But the historian Eusebius indicated that Thomas's first name was actually Judas, so he went by the name the twin to distinguish him from the other disciples by the same name. You'll have to solve this riddle on your own. The first biblical account concerning Thomas can be found in the story of Lazarus' death. Now, the story goes that Lazarus was deathly ill while Jesus preached across the Jordan. His sisters Mary and Martha frantically sent word to Jesus to come heal their brother. Yet when Jesus heard of Lazarus' sickness, he didn't rush. In fact, it took Jesus 2 days before he started toward Bethany. His disciples were afraid to go to Bethany because of the increased mob action against Jesus. Since Bethany was so close to Jerusalem, his disciples were afraid that people would find them and carry out their previous threats of stoning Jesus to death. Well, when the disciples spoke up in protest about going, Jesus said, "Lazarus is dead, and for your sakes I am glad that I was not there, so you may believe. But let us go to him." It was Thomas who responded with, "Let us also go, that we may die with him." Now, what may sound like a bit of a peevish and pessimistic statement from Thomas may in fact have summed up the stark reality facing Jesus and his disciples. There had been growing resentment from fellow Jews toward Jesus and his teachings. Jesus had fled across the Jordan to escape his enemies, and now he was going back despite the danger. It was Thomas who stepped up to say, "Let us go that we may die with him," indicating that he was willing to follow Jesus anywhere, even to death. The next words of Thomas were recorded in the Gospel of John during the Last Supper. Jesus had just told his disciples not to let their hearts be troubled, because in his Father's house there were many mansions, many rooms, and he was going there to prepare a place for them. Thomas interrupted Jesus' comforting words with a blunt question. "Lord, we don't know where you're going. How can we know the way?" Jesus replied with that famous answer, "I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father but by me." Now, this is all well and fine because Jesus is talking about the way to heaven, but Thomas is more practical. He needs specific guidelines, so he asks, "How can we be taken unto yourself when we don't know where you're going?" This is the realist in Thomas. It is his practical mind grappling with the spiritual demand of faith and the mystical knowledge of Jesus. When Thomas was told about Jesus' resurrection and his subsequent appearance to his fellow disciples, his words indicated that he needed proof concerning just about everything. Because Thomas wasn't present at Jesus' first appearance, he couldn't believe what his fellow disciples were telling him. He tells them, "Unless I see the print of the nails in his hands and place my hand in his side, I will not believe." Pretty strong words from a man who spent quality time with Jesus. But just imagine those 8 long days spent by Thomas after he was told about Jesus' miraculous appearance after suffering such a horrific death. Surely Thomas must have wrestled with his doubts and questions before Jesus appeared to his disciples again. It was at this time that Thomas was able to see and touch the wounds of his risen Lord and God with his own eyes and hands. So where did Thomas go after the Pentecost? Well, the apocryphal text titled "The Acts of Thomas" explains that Thomas, perhaps haunted by his doubts, didn't leave Jerusalem right after the Pentecost. When the apostles divided up the world to coordinate their efforts as they started to spread the good news of Jesus, it is the historian Eusebius who explains that Thomas protested when he was told that he, along with Nathaniel Bartholomew, were assigned to Parthia and northwest India. Texts indicate that Thomas said, "I cannot go there because of the fatigue of the body on the journey, and for I am a Hebrew." To solve the problem, Jesus appears to Thomas in a dream to change his mind about going to India. It is written that Thomas continues to resist and even told Jesus, in essence, he would go anywhere into any other country for him, but that he couldn't go to India. In the dream, Jesus tells him, "No, you need to go as an architect. If you go and build a mansion, I will promise you the palm of martyrdom." So Thomas eventually decided to go along with this plan. Some stories say that after this, Jesus shows himself to Abanes, a merchant from India, and sells Thomas to him as a slave. Thomas recognizes that he is Jesus' slave and that this is a safe way to get to India. So he gives up and he travels with Abanes. However, we don't know if this story is actually fact or fiction. What we do know is that Bartholomew and Thomas may have followed land and sea routes of the silk and spice roads to get themselves to the east. Here's a map so we can orient ourselves. According to tradition, it's believed that when Thomas first arrived in northwestern India, he met King Gondophares, the ruler of the Indo-Parthian kingdom. Let's find that region. King Gondophares ruled this kingdom from 19 to 46 AD. And when he met Thomas for the first time, he inquired about his skills. Thomas told him, "I am a carpenter and a stonemason," and proceeds to tell the king all the things that he can build, which happens to include houses and royal palaces. Well, King Gondophares, because he always wanted a palace styled like the Romans, was very excited. So he quickly commissions Thomas to build a palace for him, and he gives Thomas plenty of money to build it. With that, the king leaves the province for 2 years. Now, during this time, Thomas travels throughout the region, preaching to the people about Jesus Christ, healing the sick, casting out devils, performing miracles, and giving the king's money to the poor. Many thought Thomas was a sorcerer, but come to see that the miracles he performed were because of his faith in Jesus Christ. So the story goes that the king returns after 2 years and wants to see his new palace. Yet all he hears about are Thomas's exploits during that time. And the king brings Thomas before him and he demands to know about the palace. Thomas tells him that he has built a palace for the king, to which the king asks, "Well, where is it? I want to see it." Thomas replies, "You can only see it when you depart this world, because it is built in heaven for you." Thomas warns the king that he can only receive this palace as a heavenly reward if he converts to Christianity. So the king has come back from his trip to find no money, no new palace, wild stories about heavenly palaces, and a whole lot of newly converted Christians in his realm. Not liking this, he jails Thomas so that he can execute him. As King Gondophares ponders this, his brother Gad, also spelled like this, dies suddenly and then comes back to life several days later. Gad speaks of a vision whereby he went to heaven and an angel showed him all these beautiful palaces. The angel explained that this is the palace which was built by Thomas through his preaching, healing, and giving the king's money to the poor. This is the palace that the king will receive. Gad tells his brother, the king, that Thomas has indeed built this palace. He saw it, and not to execute him. When the king hears this, He releases Thomas from prison and he asks his forgiveness. Both King Gondophares and his brother Gad give their lives to God and are baptized. Now here's an interesting note. Until a few decades ago, no record existed of a king named Gondophares, so many considered this story just a tall tale. But recent excavations have unearthed coins and inscription of a king by this name, who did reign in northwestern India during that time, that Thomas might have lived there too. So what happened to Thomas after that? Well, it's believed that Thomas traveled south by boat from northwestern India when an attack threatened his safety. Legend has it that Thomas landed in a port called Muciris on the Malabar coast of southwestern India around the year 52 AD. This port appears to have been situated around present-day Kodungallur. During his time there, Thomas is credited with founding 7 churches, communities, along the Peria River and along the coast. Here are 2 maps to help us locate these areas. The Golden Legend tells us that Thomas later heads to the town of Chennai along the eastern side of India on the Bay of Bengal. The story goes that Thomas converts the wife of King Misdaius to Christianity. Now, Thomas encourages all the women he converts to remain chaste in their marriage bed until their husbands convert as well. And the king tells Thomas to order his wife along with all the other women back to their marriage beds, and Thomas refuses. This enrages the king so much that he throws Thomas into prison. The king devises several tortures for Thomas to kill him. But each time Thomas is tortured, God saves him through a series of miracles. King Misdaius has had enough, and he orders his guards to take Thomas to the top of a hill and finish him off with spears. The story goes that Thomas survives the attack and crawls off to a nearby cave to die on July 3rd, 72 AD. It's believed that some of Thomas's remains are buried in St. Thomas Church on the Mount near Chennai. Legend has it that the altar of the shrine at St. Thomas Mount was actually built where Thomas died. Here are a few pictures. So there you go, something to really think about this week as you explore the life and travels of Doubting Thomas on your own. In fact, there's a very interesting story connected with King Misdaius after the death of Thomas. Try to look it up for yourself and read it and see what you think. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again soon. Hey YouTubers, thanks for watching this entire video. If this is your first time here or if you're a returning viewer, I hope you enjoyed this discussion. Remember, this channel provides worship and discussion videos that you can watch anytime and any place. Nothing too heavy or intense, just simple worship and discussion videos tailored for you. And if you like this discussion, please give it a little hallelujah click down there on those like and subscribe buttons below. I would appreciate it. Oh, and don't forget to tap on the notification bell so you can know when more discussion videos are posted. And always remember that your attitude is the attitude that can change your world and the world around you. So try to have a good attitude, okay? Thanks again for watching, and go have a blessed day. And hopefully I'll see you again soon on this channel. Bye!